What's up, everybody? Thanks as always for supporting the show. It would mean a lot to me if you would take a second to scroll down and hit that subscribe button to the Hoops Tonight YouTube channel, and then follow me on social media on TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter so you guys don't miss any of our content over the course of this season. All right, let's talk some basketball. What is your opinion on Kuminga with the Warriors? He looks great during the preseason, but has not had many bright spots since the season started. I felt like he often looks a bit nervous on ball and reluctant to make a play. Is the Warriors' current reluctance to let him stay on the court as soon as he makes some mistakes stunting his confidence in his overall development? Do you think the Warriors should just trade him? So one of the things I've noticed with Kuminga is a lot of high-end potential as an on-ball creator. We've seen this in the post. He's a freak athlete. He draws a lot of fouls. That's always a really good sign. A lot of really good stuff there, right? But one of the things that Kuminga is struggling with right now is playing within the flow of a five-man unit. And that becomes a problem because he's playing with a team, in particular with Golden State, and a coach in Steve Kerr that is hyper-focused on the flow of a five-man unit, right? And so it's one of those things where I think Kuminga's value as a talent and as a trade asset is actually really, really high compared to what his actual impact is on this particular team. And so it really just comes down to aggression. Now, if you're wanting me to say don't trade Kuminga, I've been saying trade Kuminga literally since before they won the title. Like, I'm a big believer in pushing your chips in. And if it were up to me, you'd pair, Chris Paul's salary with Jonathan Kuminga, and you try to bring back someone like a Jerami Grant or one of the players from the Toronto Raptors. I had one of the guys, the next mailbag question actually, the upgrade at the 4 for the Warriors between Wiggins and Draymond you described sounds to me like Siakam or Anunoby. Do you like the fit, and could you see the Warriors going after them? Those are other examples that are excellent. The reason why I didn't throw them out yesterday is I really think that the Raptors have an outsized value of all their players. And I think that specifically when it comes to getting a Siakam or an Anunoby, you're going to have to overpay. And at a certain point, you ask yourself, how much better is a Siakam than a Jerami Grant really? And what if I could get him for less? You know what I mean? And those are the kinds of decisions you have to make. But in my opinion, I'm a big believer in if you've got Steph, Clay, Andrew Wiggins, and let's just call it Jerami Grant for the sake of this particular discussion, and Draymond Green, and off the bench, you have a Kevon Looney, and off the bench, you've got a Moses Moody, and off the bench, you've got Podziemski playing a certain amount, and if Gary Payton can come back from his calf injury, and you've got Dario Saric, I looked at it and I'm like, man, they're a lot more athletic than they used to be. They've got a lot more scoring pop in the starting lineup than they used to have. You've now turned Jonathan Kuminga into a veteran forward that has played in big playoff games and has guarded LeBron James in the Western Conference Finals and a guy that's shooting the shit out of the basketball this year. And I'm I just feel a lot more comfortable with that unit, right? Do you lose the long-term potential of Jonathan Kuminga? Yeah, you do. But it's been made abundantly clear that he's not ready to be a reliable piece in a playoff rotation, right? And so if that's the case, the question becomes, what's your goal here? Because if you don't believe in that core, then it's time to start trading the veterans and building around Jonathan Kuminga and Moses Moody and Podziemski and Trace Jackson Davis, right? But if that's not the case, if you do believe in Steph Curry, which I still do, I still think he's one of the best players. I think he's firmly in the top 3-4 players in the world. If you still believe in that, you invest in it. And the playing the two timelines thing worked for you in 2022. But don't play the results, play the process. That was a good result over a process I disagreed with. And you could argue that if they had made that sort of trade, because Jonathan Kuminga and Moses Moody basically didn't play at all in that playoff run, you could argue that they would have had a much higher chance of repeating, in addition to having probably won more comfortably in that particular year. Right? And they might be in a better position now. And so my thing is I'm a big believer in committing to the timeline, at least when it comes to having significant personnel needs. Right? I think that's, I've heard a lot of Laker fans and they're Rui Hachimura, we can't trade Rui Hachimura. He's playing really good basketball. He's a really good playoff player for us last year. We just signed him to this long-term deal. Or they'll say he's your guy who plays the 4 after LeBron James retires. And I want to be well, you're now talking about after LeBron James retires. This year, you're one of the top 6 or 7 contenders. Why are you not, and Rui plays the same position as LeBron. Now, I'm not saying give Rui away for nothing, but if you have an opportunity to go get a Jerami Grant, you get him. Because Jerami Grant can play alongside LeBron James and Anthony Davis in the starting lineup. There's a reason why Rui hasn't. Rui's not as good of a screen navigator as Jerami Grant. He's not as good of a perimeter defender as Jerami Grant. He's not as good at playing in the flow of the offense as Jerami Grant. Rui Hachimura is a really damn good player, and I like him, and I think he's going to succeed wherever else he goes. And if you can't get a high caliber player back, you keep Rui Hachimura. But like, again, look at your timeline. LeBron's 39 in December. You got to invest. Steph is 35 now. Like, at a certain point, if you don't think Kuminga can help you win a championship this season, then all you're really doing is sacrificing the potential ceiling of this team to maintain the potential future, but you're also hurting that because these guys have value. See the point? Like, you're actually better off either investing entirely in this group and maximizing this era, or investing entirely in that future era. Otherwise, you might have two mediocre eras, if that makes sense. And specifically when it comes to Kuminga, and I'd say the same thing about Rui, is a Rui Hachimura, Anthony Davis front line winning you the title? I don't think so. Is a Jonathan Kuminga-led unit, and I think Jonathan can be really good, but is Jonathan Kuminga flashing Giannis, Jokic, Anthony Edwards, is he Shai Gilgeous-Alexander? Is he flashing that level of high-end play? I'm not saying it's off the table, but it's certainly a much longer shot. And so that's the thing, is like, it's not like you're being reluctant to trade away a franchise cornerstone. Like, Jonathan Kuminga might be that, but it's so up in the air at this point. And there hasn't been that strong of an indication in that direction. And so, yeah, like I'm a big believer in like push your chips in. It just is difficult to say at this point who's going to be available. You don't want to overpay either. And so it's more of a discussion that's easier to get in the weeds about when we get closer to February.